Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick. My name is Kirk Henderson. You are joining Josh, Bo, and I at about 10:25 on October 31st, which happens to be Halloween. The Dallas Mavericks just lost to the Houston Rockets at home, the start of a 5-game homestand, 108 to 102. Josh, how you doing?
Doing okay. Thought this, I'll just be upfront with everyone that, trick or treat. I got a little one. So I missed basically the first 3 quarters. I watched the fourth, which apparently was the best. If I had to pick a quarter, I got lucky and picked the best one to watch because I did hear some of the first half and some of the third quarter on the radio as I was driving home to and from trick or treating. So I guess I lucked out by watching the best quarter of the 3, but still wasn't enough for the Mavericks to win. So I'm going to be relying on you for like the first 3 quarters. And I know you didn't get to watch as much as maybe you would have liked, but was it as ugly as it looked in the first half at times?
Let me be clear.
Uh-oh.
Barack Obama voice. Let me be clear. This is the point in the podcast where some loser asshole clips whatever 2-minute segment I do here. And it's like, look at Kirk being mean. Kirk is a big, mean guy. Oh my God, Kirk said a mean thing about the player that I liked. Guys, here's the thing. When you go to the NBA Finals, I expect a great deal from you, particularly when you actually, in my opinion, improve the roster. Okay? The Dallas Mavericks have improved their roster. They have started the season. They are now 3-2. They have played in 20 quarters of basketball, maybe 2.5 decent quarters of basketball. But they're ahead. They're ahead of the count. Kirk, why are you mad? Why are you mad? Well, it's a waste of my fucking time to watch elements of what this team threw out there tonight. There is a lack of focus from the entire roster for pretty much everyone not named Kyrie Irving, to the point to where the Mavericks spent a significant portion of this game down 20. I love Luka Doncic. I spend more time and have liked him longer than you. I promise. It's just a statistical likelihood. Knew who he was when he was 16. I'm a weirdo. That's the sort of thing that I do with basketball. I follow basketball. I knew who the good guy was because the Mavericks signed Harrison Barnes, and I was like, holy fucking shit, we're going to be bad. It's time to go watch basketball. Watch this guy for years. He is capable of such magical basketball, and frankly, he has been bad. He has bitched at the refs, and it's slowly gotten worse as he's been more frustrated with his play. He will be fine. Okay? He's too good to be this weird. Some of the things that he did in the first 2.5 quarters of this game were beyond gross. His decision-making, his talking to the refs, the things that he chose to do were a big part of why the Mavericks ended up in a 20-0 hole. But the thing, Josh, is he wasn't alone. Do you have the box score pulled up?
I do have the box score pulled up.
How many offensive rebounds did the Houston Rockets get?
They had 18.
Do you know how fucking hard that is?
It's a lot of offensive
rebounds. 18 offensive rebounds. That's where the team, as a collective unit, Jason Kidd needs to go back to the old shell drill where you put one of those weird bubble things on the basket, go 4v4, and make these guys learn how to box one another out again. Some of the rebounds that this team was getting, it was insane. Okay? It's just like Lively. I love Lively. Lively's our future. Just is. When he plays a bad game, the Mavericks lose. Is kind of what it comes down to through 5 games this season. And he played a pretty poor game. Gafford, how many rebounds did those two guys have together?
They combined for 4 in 30 minutes.
4 total rebounds?
Wait, hold on. 4. Oh, I'm sorry. I shortchanged them. 6. 6
total rebounds.
Yes.
Guys. Stop sucking. That's sorry. I get that. And let's be clear. the Rockets are a frustrating team to play against because they are wildly athletic. Like
Yeah.
Thompson is insane. Albert Sengun, whatever the fuck his name is,
Alperen.
is the kind of player you hate to play against because he's just the guy in pickup who's constantly nudging, pushing, making the kind of like the extra hustle thing that drives you crazy on defense, while also being the kind of guy on offense who can just sort of wiggle his way to the goal. All right. This was such a maddening performance from the Dallas Mavericks for a team that has, through 5 games, you sort of hoped that they as a collective unit would wake up and play a really, really good game. Hasn't done it. Fan123, noted dipshit in our chat, says, quote, "This is a very bad roster." No, it's not. Shut the fuck up. They're playing bad. That's what they're doing. They're playing bad. The team is good, and they are playing so far beneath themselves right now that everyone needs to go look in the mirror and figure out why they're doing this. They should be embarrassed. That's what that's what I took away from this game. Like, I'm watching this game trick-or-treating, and I'm showing it to one of the other dads who's with me, and you're just watching around and you watch like the I don't know, it's like a rebound that goes out to the 12-foot range, and like you see 2 Mavericks kind of doing the chase down thing. They should be disgusted with themselves because, unlike what some of our chat says, they are not bad. They are playing bad. And, as much as I like to rag on Jason Kidd, he was calling timeouts. He was doing stuff. He was getting into the refs, because there was an earlier comment about how, hey, how many games are we going to go where we're on the other side of the free throw disparity? Well, I'll tell you what, the way you do that is to actually attack. The Mavericks are not attacking. And Kyrie was attacking. I pretty much want to put Kyrie in his own special place where I think Kyrie played a good game. Klay Thompson didn't get the ball enough, but Klay is so poor on defense. It's kind of hard to struggle with. Luka is the alpha and the omega of how this team goes, and he just needs to get it together. And again, I know I'm talking a lot because I saw the game, most of the game, and you didn't. The fourth quarter, once Luka picked up that 5th foul, he looked like a defensive savant. He played fantastic basketball in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah, he played pretty well. The one thing I'll say, there's a lot of places I could jump off there because I'm looking at the box score and thinking about it. I've got like 4 different talking points I want to hit on. But I think with Luka, since we're talking about Luka, the one thing I'll say is you're right. The fourth quarter was great. But the one thing I know, I only watched 1 quarter. The complaining was off the charts tonight. And I don't know if it killed them in the first half, because again, I didn't watch. He did seem to save a lot of it for, like, I didn't see him getting lost in transition because he was ref complaining, but he was on them every moment on the floor. And it was like, this was, in terms of, without getting a technical, I don't know if I've seen him on the refs more in a game where he didn't get a technical foul. Like, it was, and to me, that shows part of the he's obviously frustrated. He had 5 fouls. He doesn't usually get close to fouling out in a game. So obviously he was frustrated. He's frustrated with his start. And I thought like, I was watching that fourth quarter, and even though he's playing well, he looked like a dude that was pissed off that he was not playing to his standard. Like, just because he knows
that's
better
what it
than
boils
anyone.
down to. And so for somebody that's clipping and being like, Kirk Henderson, mean McButthead, look at how mean Kirk is once again to my favorite player. Luka was 6 of 17 at one point. That's happened repeatedly. Before this game, he was 36 of 99. The fact that he finished 12 of 25 means he actually started finishing some shots. Congratulations. That's what we expect of the player who's supposed to be the runaway MVP. And he's playing like ass.
Yeah. And the big thing, he only had 1 turnover, 2 assists. And that's the thing, right? That's the thing we talked about last playoffs. We talked about it every time these coaches would double and blitz Luka in the pick and roll. We were like, why would you put 2 on Luka and give these role players more confidence in open space? And then when they would not do that, they would struggle. And that's what the Celtics did. They either played him one-on-one, or they shaded their help to where it wasn't an outright blitz. They would kind of like help from different spots to make it tough and to kind of entice him into more one-on-one play. And I'm assuming, fourth quarter was obviously much better and he took advantage, but like Luka finishing a game with 38 minutes and 2 assists, like
that's impossible.
When this offense has struggled this season, which is, I mean, teams are not blitzing as much. Our good friend Bobby Caralla posted, I think he said something like he's been blitzed like less than 10 times this season. Like it's a very small number considering how many minutes he's played in 5 games.
Taking their chances. And why are they taking their chances? There's 2 reasons that I'm pretty sure I feel very confident about this.
Yeah, go right into it.
There's this idea that I think is based in history that Luka is not in shape. Luka is in shape right now. Luka does things where he is watching the footwork of defenders, and I honestly think he is overthinking almost all of his attacks. He is missing so many shots from the 10-foot and in range. They're gonna start to go, but he also just needs to fucking attack. He just needs to attack. He gives up layups because he wants to make the fancy pass, and he gets this from both ends from us, and sometimes it's not fair. Where we complain about him not making the extra pass because we want him to score, and then we complain about him making the extra pass because the inverse. Like we want him to go both. We want both things from him, and sometimes that's not fair. But I think the idea that Luka is not in shape is based in history, but not in reality.
Yeah, and he was 3 of 4 at the rim. Four shots at the rim is okay. He was 2 of 8 in the paint outside the rim, and that's kind of where, since like his second year in the league, he's kind of owned that space. Which is, admittedly, that's not a spot where you can be very efficient. Like the league average in that area, outside the restricted area, but still inside the paint, it's 41%. So. But that's why he's such a great scorer, because he's so good at manipulating that space, using his power, using his size, using his skill, using his touch, that he's traditionally been very good there. And he wasn't good there tonight. I don't think he's been good there this season. And yeah, that feels like the thing is like I've said it. I think I've said it almost after every game, because I mean, he struggled with his shot almost every game. Is like, how long do we use the no preseason, injured during training camp line of reasoning? Because we're 5 games in, we're a week into the season. When does that stop being a viable? I don't know. Like, is it just going to snap, or is it just going to click? Where one of these games he's just going to, have 40 points on 60% shooting? Like, you just kind of feel like you're waiting for it, and it feels like a cop-out to just say after all these games he struggles. Well, he's working his way back in because he didn't have a preseason. He barely had a training camp because of his injury, but that's also part of it. Like, you don't want to not ignore that. So it makes it harder to talk about to me, because I don't want to lean on that as a crutch when trying to talk about what's going on, but also we can't be unfair and ignore it. But yeah, you're right. He needs to figure it out. He needs to get things clicking, and I think
he's not attacking enough. He is simply not attacking enough. There is a relentlessness to the Luka that I have seen in my time watching him that is not there right now, because he is hunting for different kinds of shots. He takes, and I'd be curious, and this is purely anecdotal, but I was talking about it with one of our listeners, Josh, who goes to the gym with me, and he and I were talking about this. Luka takes it's a 15-footer that's about 2 steps out of the free throw line. Do you know what shot I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He spins into it a lot of the time, and I feel like he hasn't made that damn thing one time. And I feel like he shot it about 10. And there's an element of this where it's like he is so dead set on getting a guy on his back hip because he thinks he can draw the foul, that once he is thinking he's going to draw the foul, whatever happens next is too complicated. A lot of the times he can just score, and he doesn't. And I'm not sure what is going on right now with some of the decision making, because I think it has a lot to do with the single coverage, where his brain and because again, this guy is a basketball savant that will understand the quickness and things that are happening in a way that I could never even speak about, let alone understand. But things are happening to where he is making what should be a straightforward series of decisions too complicated, and he's missing. And he'll figure it out. Of course he'll figure it out. But they had a night off after a really great win against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it feels like they took an enormous step back. And I'm annoyed.
That's fair. No, it's fair to be annoyed. And you said that. I wanted to look at his shot chart. He's had 17 attempts in the restricted area. He's making 70% of them, which is very good.
Great.
He's got 24 mid-range attempts. So he's got more mid-range attempts than he has restricted area attempts.
Not a good shot diet. The end.
No, and especially for him. He's got 35 attempts in the paint outside the restricted area. So most of his shots are still he still has more paint shots than mid-range shots, but you know, like there's a difference between restricted area and then, like you said, that shot near the free throw line, which counts as a paint shot, but that's, you know, that's not an easy, it's not an easy shot. He's 8 of 24 from mid-range, 33%. That's not
awful.
Good.
And what made him, we have one listener, and Harold, who joined our StreamYard. Harold was talking about how good Luka looked in 2019, whatever bubble season was, which I guess was
2020. Yeah, he lived at the rim.
2020.
He was insane. Yeah,
he was insane from the mid-range that year, and so much to the point that it's very clear in hindsight the mid-range shooting in the 2019-20 campaign was an outlier. Not to say he's bad at mid-range shots, but he falls in love with them sometimes to an extent which drives me nuts. I get that he doesn't want to go to the rim, get hammered, get beat on, but you can't shoot like he shot through the majority of 5 games. Because again, guys, he finished 12 of 25. He was 6 of 17 at one point. That means he finished 6 of 8 for those of you who can do math.
Right. So for reference, obviously we're in small sample size theater, but last season he was 43.8% on mid-range shots, and he was 54.8% on the paint outside the restricted area shots. He's 40% through 5 games this season. So
that's gonna suss itself out.
That's the area of the floor that why is he struggling so much? Because he's not making the floaters. Like he's just not that floater range shot, which is his bread and butter. He's not making them. So for whatever reason, you know, we talked about it. Spacing. I don't know, but I think teams are just they're going to let him work one-on-one. And if he's not feeling great because he didn't have a preseason and he's working himself, not saying he's out of shape, but like there's a difference between you don't play a preseason game to playing in a regular season. Like he's still figuring some things out. That's going to make it look awkward. And it's looked very awkward. And they're going to have to do some, like, this isn't just like hey, Luka needs to figure it out. Teams are going to keep playing them like this. Like the book is starting to get written on, hey,
take your chances.
Let Luke, yeah, right. Let them play one-on-one, and then don't let the role players beat you and see what happens.
But the stupid part about this is it shouldn't be the role players. What role players are we talking about? Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, PJ Washington, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford. There should be no beating. This is where the cuteness of what the Mavericks have done offensively, if you want to table the Luka element, okay, and you want to talk about what the Mavericks are doing as a whole, this is where there's an element of what the Mavericks are doing as a whole is pissing me off. They find things that work, and then they're like, you know what? We're not going to do that thing again. They are. Like, have they run very many what's the screen? I'm not a
dribble handoffs.
Guy. They've not run very many dribble handoffs. That's one of them. They've also not run the Luka high screen and roll with Lively, where Klay Thompson then goes and screens Lively and Klay pops out.
Screener, yeah.
They did a couple of times this game. They actually did, but that's the first time we've seen it since the first game.
Yeah, and Klay struggled. You know what? He was 5 of 13. Oof. That's a lot of mid. No, that's not a lot. I mean, 2 of 9 from 3. I think he only made both of his threes.
I mean, the Mavericks were so butt from 3.
Yeah.
10 of 33 is actually misleading for how bad they were.
Because I mean, everything happened in the fourth quarter, right? Like
Luka hit all 3, I think, in the fourth.
Yeah. So I've got another point I want to jump off on, but I don't know. Is it break time? Is this
It should be break time.
Okay,
All right,
let's
we'll
do
break real
time.
quick. Lunatics, fans, friends, enemies, consider clicking that old subscribe button if you're here live on the YouTube channel. Though the Pod Maverick YouTube channel is inching towards our season goal of 5,000. We're still over 1,500 people away, but every single person matters to us because we like talking basketball with our friends. Those of you who are listening on the audio stream on your podcast platform of choice, please consider leaving a review. Please consider rating us as well. Also, please just consider telling your Mavs fans friends about this, because this is a community-based podcast where we want you to participate in our show. I yelled at my friend Fan123 earlier in the YouTube stream, but that's only because he cares as much as we do, which is why he's still hanging out with us. If you want to join our secondary live show, I tend to want to run one of those after every single game. It's a little bit difficult to do sometimes over an 82-game season, but those of you who have hung out with us know we're coming through. We're having, I think I've done three out of 4 so far. I want to make it 4 out of 5 tonight. We will hang out and talk a little Mavs basketball and also get some of our feelings out in the process. That's pretty much the extent of our pitch, though. If you want to hear from me even more, I've been hosting playback rooms where you can watch the Mavericks with some friends. We have about 30, 40, 50 people that join us every night. And it's nice to just watch basketball with friends. So I'm going to post that probably in the podcast as well. But it's also pretty easy to find if you go to my social media. That's the extent of me shilling. I'm going to stop talking for about 3 seconds where Josh and I will insert some ads for those of you on the audio feed. And then we will be right back. All right. I hope the audio of my wife attempting to wrangle our alligator / dog in the background didn't get picked up too much during the last 30 seconds. She is having a hard time with Halloween.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
And she's just like, I want to play with all the people.
Yeah.
I go, the people coming to our door, I want to be friends with them. It's fucking impossible. Anyway, all right. What else we got? What are your other points that you were hanging your head on?
Okay, so this is something you're gonna have to do some of the heavy lifting, because it's just I want to know, because obviously, like I only watched the fourth quarter, and Gafford and Lively basically were already done from the game by then. And I think they combined for they each played 15 minutes, and it looks like foul trouble was awful. They had 5 foul. Lively had 5 in 15 minutes. Gafford had 4 in 15 minutes. I noticed. So it's. I just want to know what you think. Second half of last season, after the trade deadline, we all know the NBA changed how they called games and allowed for a more physical game. And we both talked about during that second half run, during the playoffs, that the Mavericks were one of the teams we felt like that benefited one of the most teams that benefited the most from that change in officiating, because they were like the 2020 Lakers. I think I used the analogy of the Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks when they won the Super Bowl, their defense, where they did the thing where they're like, okay, Derek, we're going to beat the shit out of you. Call a foul. Like, are you going to call a foul every single time down the floor? We don't think you are. So we're going to physically impose our will onto you. And we don't think the refs are going to call it every single time. And we're just going to beat your ass. And that, the Mavericks have so many good athletes now. Lively, Gafford, PJ Washington, now Najee Marshall, last season, Derek Jones Jr. They're not doing that anymore. Like they are calling the game, I feel like, how they called the game last season before the All-Star break. Is that a problem? Because they built this team to take advantage of how the game was being called second half of last season in the playoffs. If that doesn't happen, is that a problem?
Yes, but here's the real thing. They're only calling it that way. I don't want to be a refs guy. I spent all of Dirk Nowitzki's career being a refs guy. Luka Doncic shot 4 fucking free throws. Kyrie Irving shot 3. If we're going back to ticky-tack horse shit, everything is a foul call, then the Mavericks need to fucking get a call. I mean, I'll be honest. When I'm watching the other guys, the Livelies, the Gaffords, they committed a lot of stupid fouls tonight. They committed a lot of stupid fouls. Like Juicebox in the chat says, DJ DJJ plus Lively plus PJ defense was special. Honestly, man, in the fourth quarter, whenever the refs were forced to swallow the whistles because they weren't going to pull Luka because some of the fouls on Luka were garbage. They weren't gonna pull Luka from the game. The way they called the game in the fourth was how they called the game the entirety of the playoffs and things like that.
And the second half of the regular season.
And so, frankly, this just needs to normalize. It needs to normalize because it's not watchable right now. Like if you're gonna do this, like the Mavericks shot 20 free throws, the Rockets shot 27. The disparity's not that bad. But
and the Rockets had 36 shots at the restricted area. The Mavericks had 24.
Yes,
they were there more often.
That's those two things are weighted, fair enough. Yeah. But it's just it is a problem for the Mavericks if they don't figure this out. I will say that aside, the Mavericks could afford to stop committing stupid fouls.
Yeah, I wonder like how much is it that and how much of it is that other thing. I did hear Jason Kidd doing an interview. I think it was like a day ago or before the Minnesota game, or maybe it was before this game. It was before this game, and he did comment on like because someone, I think it was Chuck Cooperstein, asked him like, "Hey, like the game is being ref differently than how it was post All-Star break. Like, how do you handle that?" And he kind of acknowledged like, we hope that stuff evens out, but he did admit he was like, we're fouling too much. Like. Take all that out. Take all the noise about officiating out. He said he was like, we are fouling too much. So
I was talking in the playback stream with Matthew. Matthew is our resident Mavs fans refs guy. Like just casually, it's much more funny when you hear him talking about it. Josh, he drives us crazy in the Slack with his typing. When one of the things when he's like, "That's a foul, that's a travel." When he's talking about it live, it's hilarious, and I recommend joining the live stream for it. But one of the I was going somewhere with this. One of the things with the foul calls that the Mavericks are struggling with right now is against the Rockets in particular in quarters 1 through 3. It took every single Rockets ball handler a single dribble move to put the Dallas Mavericks in rotation. The on-ball guys have to be better with the first action that's coming at them, because if you get put in rotation with 20 seconds left on the shot clock, i.e. what I'm describing, guys, is if the help has to come immediately, you fucked up as a defense. That means that individual people who are supposed to do their jobs aren't doing their jobs within the time frame that is an acceptable thing, because that's part of why the Rockets got 18 offensive rebounds. All these Mavericks are disjointed and they're out of position because they're having to cover for one another. It's every single one of them too. It's not Luka. It's not Kyrie. It's not Klay. It's all of them. And that's what made the fourth quarter so ridiculous, is you're watching Luka stonewall guys. And some of that is the refs allowing physicality to go in a way that they did in the first three quarters. But guys, like I talk to I have an 8-year-old. I talk about this all the time with him, where I show him, and granted, NBA clips it's like he's 8. It's not the same thing. But it's like, if you attack a guy's weak side or weak foot or weak hip, and you can get past him in a dribble, you as a defender have failed. And the Mavericks are getting whipped on the first dribble in some instances, and it's driving me nuts.
And this was the concern. We talked about if we're bringing in Klay Thompson, because that means 3 of your 5 closers, main guys that you're not taking off the floor, presumably, are what? Average to below average defenders across the board. Kyrie tries, and when Luka tries, he's definitely above average, but in the aggregate, that's something that another team can exploit. And yeah, I saw a little bit in the Minnesota game in the fourth quarter where Minnesota was like, wait, why are we going after Lively? Why are we going after PJ Washington? Like, everything we run needs to involve those three, Kyrie, Luka, Klay. And they scored like, I don't know, I can't remember, like 2-3 straight possessions. I remember thinking like, but then they kind of figured it out because Lively had a monster defensive game against the Wolves, but he wasn't able to, wasn't able to stay on the floor because they were kind of getting whipped with the fouls. And like you said, like you get beat when your front line of defense gets beat off the dribble so quickly, your first line, like your bigs are getting hung out to dry at the rim. They commit more fouls. Like
Yes.
I didn't see the first half, but I assume it's a lot of
that's a big
blow
part
by, and then Lively has to go to the rim and a foul's called.
And so let me read you this. You actually shared this with me earlier today, but I think this is pretty important. And I want to provide the caveat where if Luka Doncic is playing well on offense, I think some of this starts to solve itself. But ESPN put the Dallas Mavericks 4th in their power rankings. Tim McMahon wrote the blurb, and it's absolutely hilarious. He says, Klay Thompson shot 45.5% from three-point range on 11 attempts on the Mavs during the Mavs 3-1 start, averaging 19.7 points. Thompson has stated his determination to, quote, get rid of the notion that I'm not the same defender I once was, end quote. And he's also off to a strong start on that end of the court. The Mavericks have, and McMahon fucked this up, or whoever did the editing, because this is actually only through 3 games. The Mavericks have a 112.7 defensive efficiency with Thompson on the court this season, and 101.9 when he is off. That's a massive difference. And what he basically did there, for someone who can't read between the lines, or the audio, or the way I read it doesn't make sense to you, Tim McMahon very politely said that he provided Klay's quote that he thinks he can help the Mavericks be better on defense, while showing that he's actually quite fucking terrible on defense on the Mavericks so far.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because I think I said this in Slack. Like if Klay's on the floor and their defense is at 112.7 per 100 possessions, that wouldn't be a terrible number. Like that would probably finish what did last season? Like if you took that number last season, where would that rank? I'm loading the numbers. Last season, that would have been a top 5 defense. Miami Heat had the 5th best defense last season, 112.7 per 100 possessions allowed. So in the like that actually would be pretty good if they could hold on to it. But it does show like they were playing better with him off the floor. Now again, per possession data right now is not reliable because of how early we are in the season, but this is a challenge. This was not a surprise. Like we knew coming into the season, we were like, how are they going to get around this? And they've done a pretty good job so far. Like honestly, the reason they're 3-2 and they're not 4-1 or 5-0 is because their offense is stunk. And I know that their defense has been compromised at times, but
their offense is not nearly good enough to I earnestly believe the offense has stunk by design. Like, I really earnestly feel like they're running away from things that work because Jason Kidd is this kind of coach. This is not a complaint. This is a thing I'm pointing out. But for the Mavericks to win 55 games this season, they need to pick up the fucking pace.
Yeah, it's harder to experiment if you want to get if you want to get a top seed in the West, because there's no time. There's absolutely no time. We see it tonight. This Houston team, I fucking love this Houston roster. And they were a lottery team last season. And like, man, they got so many dudes. And like, they're not even a team that was really projected to be a majority top 8 team. But they could kick your ass on any given night. Like they kind of did tonight to the Mavericks. Like there's just so many teams in the West where you can't take your foot off the gas for a minute, or they will send you packing. They'll send you going home. So,
well, and everybody in the chat quite now is like understandably very frustrated at the offense. But I urge you to go listen to the podcast with Adam Mares and Tim Legler from 2 days ago on the All Cities Podcast Network, where they spend about 20 minutes talking about how easy it is for the Mavericks to get shots. They go through and they break down the specifics of why things are working within the Mavericks offense when they work. And that's what I'm getting at right now is I'm saying things can work. Things that are working. They need to find a way. Like they're getting way too cute with stuff too early. Like again, Luka Doncic pick and roll, like his usage is still high, but I'm not seeing near the spam pick and roll shit we've seen in past years. This has been coming because the Mavericks have played poorly, but they were winning anyways. Okay. And so it's like I part of me thinks we should just kind of close up in a second here, and I can get on to the next show, just because it's like we know what the problems are, we know how they should fix them. They simply need to fix them. The simple Luka play better button covers like 50% of what they need to do. But it's also like guys rebound, guys play defense with a little more cohesion and awareness, and then we figure some things out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's run some more dribble handoffs. I want to write that. I'm going to write that story. But it's hard to do that when your two centers don't play the whole game because they're in foul trouble and ineffective. So that's when, they schematically on the offensive side, a lot of it is just make shots, but they really need to have a better plan. And I think they've got tape that shows what that plan can be, that when teams are not blitzing Luka, like they need better plan B's and C's than just let Luka and Kyrie do something. And then they do it. Like we've seen them do it. Even this season, we've seen them do it. So it's just a matter of them being more consistent about off-ball stuff for Klay, using Lively and Gafford at the elbow, handling the ball, using them as dribble handoff hubs. It's there. They just got to get to it, and I'm sure they will. We'll see. As we're rounding out, I did want to note there are two cool things I noticed, and this is just fourth quarter. One, I thought PJ Washington played a tremendous defensive game in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
He whipped Sengun's ass in the fourth quarter. He played him off the floor. He played him off the floor. The Rockets had to close the game without him because Washington ate him up in the post defensively. Yep. Thought he played a really good defensive game. Would have been nice if he made a couple more shots, although he shot 3 of 6. He just didn't shoot a lot. He had 3 blocks and 3 steals. Like his defense, his offense is still weird.
He's been the second best Maverick behind Kyrie through 5 games.
And Lively?
I think he has had Lively's had 2 absolute duds.
Yeah, the Phoenix game and this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
PJ drives me freaking crazy, but it's because I think his consistency range needs to tighten up.
Because his talent, because you see him do this stuff on defense, and you're like, man, if you could just toss in a couple more buckets a game, like you're an elite role player. And he's already approaching that with his defense right now. So PJ, very good on defense, and I think he's been really good on defense all season. The other thing we saw is since Gafford and Lively were ineffective in foul trouble, we saw Najee Marshall small ball center for most of the fourth quarter, and I thought that looked kind of cool. And I think that's something that they need to get back to. Najee he's a big dude. He is bigger than I remember watching him in New Orleans. Like, you watch a guy 4 games versus I've already watched more Najee Marshall through 5 games now than I watched Najee Marshall last season. So you just don't realize it till you see him up close consistently. He's a big dude, and that's a fun lineup. He had 3 assists. His passing as a small ball 5 with Klay and Kyrie and Luka. They did some stuff with him, and he held his own. He had 2 rebounds, 22 minutes. That's the part that's going to be tough, because even when they went small, Houston kept killing them on the glass. So if you go small with Najee at the 5, I don't know how sustainable it is, because I just don't think that lineup rebounds enough. They're already struggling at times rebounding when they play big ball. That I don't know if Najee is a good enough rebounder to hold up for long stretches. But as a party trick, as something to get back into the game, as something to do when your centers are in foul trouble, I thought that was pretty cool. And I think that's something that they should try to keep incorporating throughout the season.
It was certainly fun to watch. It was a little shocking. I really actually enjoyed Najee's defense in that regard, because when there's not a rim protector, I think it brings out something different in perimeter-based guys. Like, he had a body in him.
Do you think it's like knowing they don't have the safety blanket?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like driving without training wheels?
I really do. I mean, that was some of the best defense I've seen Najee play, and it's because there wasn't a defender back there. And it's like, oh, hey, I remember this. This is what I did when Zion was back there.
Yeah. So that was cool. I think those were probably 2 of the most positive things to take away.
Well, and we've not, and frankly, in mixed in with all this, I've alluded to it, but Kyrie Irving was why the thing was close. He was awesome. He was breathtaking. And
has he been the best Maverick through 5
yes,
games? I think
he's been the best Maverick through 5 games.
I think so.
Yeah.
He's shooting absurdly for
and we're wasting it. That's why I'm so mad.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Yeah, he's been awesome.
All right.
24 games, shooting over 50% from three. That'll do it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'm going to host this secondary show here. We got one gentleman waiting. I'm going to go to a quick break. Those of you who have participated in the show, we have Henry leaving a pair of super chats. Thank you so much, Henry. We always appreciate you. Those of you who'd like to come join and get your takes off, let's hang out at a group therapy for maybe 20, 25 minutes, and then everybody can go to bed. We'll see if anyone at Mavs Moneyball actually turned in stuff that they were supposed to do. Hey, they did. Okay, it's good stuff. Yeah. And we have a gentleman, Michael Harris, who just we're like, hey, Michael, take a breather, calm down on your posting, and he's like, no, I'm going to turn in a bajillion words after every game.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, well, it's
fun. That's
we love it.
Yeah.
Yep. Head over to mavsmoneyball.com. We had an outstanding October. We're finishing out right now. We're gonna, if you guys want game coverage following a game, even a bad game, you're gonna get it over at Mavs Moneyball. So, thanks so much for hanging out, and I will be right back. Josh, you're the best. Everybody have a great week. We'll be right back. Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark presents Group Therapy. This is our post-game after show where you get to join. We have 3 folks already waiting to fire off their takes. It's some of my dear friends and constant listeners. We're going to bring our man Ryan up, then we're going to have Glenn, and then we're going to have Henry. But I tell you guys, if you have thoughts, if you want to join this show, if you have been at all wondering if this is something you should do, or you just really want to, fire it off, I tell you, this is the show to join. This is a show for hardcore fans because it is probably our least listened to show, because the after show after a loss is the one people really want to forget. But you know what? I like to mire in misery because I think it's the only way that we learn. Coming up first is Brian.
Kirk, dude, I'm tired already. We're only 5 games into this shit, and I don't know, man. Like you and Josh touched on it earlier. We're running away from all the things that we see work, and that, and just the Luka forcing it when the shots aren't falling. Him missing shots is annoying. Him forcing it because he knows he's missing and he's trying to shoot his way out of a slump is even more annoying. Even more annoying than that is that we're not helping this offense out at all by running the 4 or 5 actions that we know we can bank and get 10 points each off of every game, because we're saving them from some mysterious point later on in the season or for the playoffs. But the problem is you got to win the 55 games it's going to take for you to get home court to get to the playoffs in a position you want to be in, right? I don't know. I'm also annoyed because, like you said, we're wasting really good Kyrie performances. We're wasting excellent Kyrie performances. PJ has been really good. The Najee PJ front court was really intriguing in the fourth, although we're so bad at rebounding. I don't want to see it again because I don't trust them to rebound enough around that, to make it viable.
I forgot I'd muted myself. The viability of this is just one of these things where if the Mavericks play the Magic on Sunday in an early game, and then they turn around the next night and play that really weird late home game against the Pacers, there's an opportunity here for the Mavericks to go either way. And I need them to take the season by the balls and play well. One of my constant criticisms of Jason Kidd-led teams, and I'm not wrong. I don't like criticizing him anymore. It doesn't do any good, but I'm not wrong here, is that his teams play like shit early in the year. And secondarily, Luka doesn't have a good enough regular season record for a player of his caliber. You merge these two things together and you get mediocrity. And it's like you said, they're wasting strong performances and they just have to suss it out.
Yeah, it's just annoying because, like, you can feel it, right? You know they're going to lose that game to Orlando, right? Their defense is like the Pacers game is the schedule loss because facing the Orlando defense and getting beat up by that and then having to go run with the Pacers, even if Halliburton can't shoot, it doesn't matter if he can't shoot. They're going to outrun us and they're going to kill us in transition. That's the schedule loss. But I don't have any reason to believe that this team can beat Orlando right now, even without Paolo. Even if Franz is still hurt, we can't score enough to beat them.
I don't know about that.
If they're going to come out there and play like they did in this game, they can't score enough to beat that Orlando team.
Well, I mean, that's where spamming some of the stuff that works has to come into play, right?
You would think. If we see, I'll know if they're going to take that game seriously. If in the first quarter, if we see any either of the high DHO hub stuff with the centers or the Spain pick and roll with Klay as the back screen, if they don't try either of those at any point in the first quarter, they'll know that they're not taking that game serious, and I'll just cut it off. I'm not going to lie. I don't need to see what happens after. Or if Luka can score 10 points in the first quarter, then I'll think we'll be all right. If he can't score 10 in the first quarter, there's no point in watching that game. They're going to get run out of there.
You think?
Dude, that Orlando team is too good defensively. They're too young. They're too athletic and fast once you let them get in the open court. Anthony Black is going to run all over those dudes.
My guy.
Like have you been watching him, by the way? He's been so good.
Yes, I feel very validated. Now, Lively's still better, but I feel great about my take with him. He's the guys that blossom late are so fascinating to consider because it's like, oh, they really only played basketball as a secondary thing until they were like 16 years old. Do you know what I mean?
And we're like great at other sports otherwise, right? And so like, yeah, it was just always funny to me, like around draft time. It was like, oh man, the Magic are drafting another point guard who can't shoot. And I'm like, yeah, well, he's like an elite defender, like an elite defender, like almost right away. Like he was so good that they just gave up on Fultz and said, dude, you can go find a free agency. We got your replacement right here. And he's just leading the second unit now. And the whole criticism was, okay, well, yeah, he can defend. Yeah, he can pass. He's an amazing passer. Yeah, he can get downhill. He can score like with a head of steam, but he can't shoot. Okay, well, now he can shoot. So now what? Mm-hmm. Like good players get better if you give them time. And so not everybody that, might have won him and didn't end up taking him kind of looks like, look, man, I think I'm Thompson. No, I can't go there. Amen's too good.
He's wild.
Houston probably should have drafted Anthony Black, even as good as Amen is and as great as I think he's going to be.
He's fun, man. They just have a lot of fun players.
I couldn't believe he hit that bullshit at the end of the game. Though. He's such a bad shooter, and I want the shot to get there, but him hitting that little fade and midi on the baseline against, I was like, yeah, that's when I knew the game was really over. After like 2 quarters of telling myself it was already over, that was unfortunate. And then of course Jalen Green just kicks our ass because he can get anybody. He can get by anybody on our perimeter just off one step. Like 2 steps, he was right at the rim. Like it didn't matter who was guarding him. Luka was getting it the worst, but once they allowed Luka to start fouling again in the fourth quarter, which is always fun when he gets 4 or 5, and the refs are like, well, we can't kick him out of the game, so let's just let him have these couple he's gonna get, and that's when the defense started to shore up. It's just funny how that works, but yeah, Jalen Green killed us in the fourth quarter, and it sucks so bad because that team was so bad tonight and we just let them off the hook with so many offensive rebounds.
Yep. The two centers, and I'm arguing in the chat with somebody right now about Lively, for example. The two centers took themselves out of so many different plays, but that's also a cascading effect of the rotational defense that the Mavericks weren't playing.
Yeah, of like all the guards and all the perimeter defenders just getting beat off of one move, like you said, and then the centers like jumping out of position to go and try and chase the block or try and defend the rim, and then nobody helping them out on the backside if they did happen to contest a shot and force a miss, and boxing out and getting the rebound. And we couldn't close any possessions tonight. It felt like, and every single shot that went up to Houston, I felt like was either going to be a make or they were getting the ball back and they were getting at least one more attempt.
Yeah. No, it's something. It's something.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of basketball comes together over the course of the year, but this is fun to argue about, and it's really fun to be mad at. I'll tell you that, because I was kind of getting bored being like, "Oh, this is fun." Blah, blah, blah. I like this. This guy's saying I'm being obtuse when he's like trying to explain why the team that made the finals needs to trade for Santi Aldama. Like, no,
dude, I really like Santi Aldama. I don't know if that's. Like, he's really good. The problem isn't any one player right now. Like, Luka's offense is hurting us a lot. Like,
yes, no, it's got such like a cascade effect where it's like when Luka's shooting 35% from the floor, everything else feels like dog water.
Yeah, and it's again, it was like me mentioning a couple games ago, like how good Najee's body language is, and how I'd like to just have him on the court just for that, because it cancels out just how dog shit Luka's is when he's in a rut, and his has been bad. Like whenever he's missing a couple shots in a row, like I don't know. Well, any one player other than Luka, that's not what this is about. This is about the entire team just giving a piss poor effort on the defensive boards tonight, and that just kind of killed us.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. Well, I appreciate you kicking us off. We're gonna go to Glenn next. You got anything else before you go?
We're gonna have fun watching this team eventually. When, I don't know, but eventually.
Yeah. All right, man. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right. Glenn, what's going on?
Kirk, how you doing tonight? Sorry. I mean Cocoa Pebbles.
Cocoa Pebbles is better than me. I've like right within range. I have some like kettle chips, and I just should need to stop eating them.
Kettle chips are great. I love kettle chips. Kirk, I'm going to be the voice of reason. Don't expect me to do this ever again. And I will say that I have a bottle of Santa Margarita tonight, Pinot Grigio 2023.
Fancy.
Very good. That's what I drank. For the next big game, I've got a bottle of Eroica 2021 that's been sitting in my wine closet for quite some time. Okay, let's talk about this. So Jimmy Johnson, back in 1992 was the first Cowboys win, said he wanted a loss. He wanted the Cowboys to lose the game late in the season so that they could realize that every game requires full focus. The Mavericks tonight, this was a great loss. I enjoyed this quite a bit. First off, we unlocked the Luka cheat code. He started hitting his shots in the second half of the game. He started looking like the Luka of old. And that's the key to this team, right? But Kyrie was hitting his shots. Klay, I know Klay finished something like 3 of 9, but he hit some clutch shots in the fourth quarter.
That shot where he and Luka were right next to each other, and Luka was like, "Oh shit, I need to move." That one really made me laugh.
That was great. That was great. Look, Klay still needs to get used to the concept of that he doesn't need to shoot contested shots. He's going to get wide open shots every time if he just waits in the right spot and gets and is patient. So this Mavericks team that we saw in the second half of tonight's game, particularly the late third quarter, early, and then in the fourth quarter, showed what this Mavericks team was going to be. I also think that the Houston I say this in the beginning of the game. The Houston Rockets have been drafting lottery picks every year.
But they don't have the Luka, and that's all that really matters. Like, you go look at the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's like Ja Morant played a great game tonight, but he's just not. He's just, at whatever size he is, he's just not physically able to do the thing. And so it's like when you have a whole bunch of lottery players, it's really great and can make you look amazing some nights. But until you find that guy, it's a struggle bus.
That's all right. The Rockets are going to be there at the end of the season. Mark my words here. Mark this down or whatever you do. The Rockets are going to emerge as one of the real contenders in the West. And then that, of course, means that some team that you think is going to be one of the real contenders in the West is not going to be there at the end of the season.
Probably not, but this is where knocking them down is important, and not letting them get a win is important.
Agree, but it's beginning of the season, and I am very much well aware that the Mavericks won their first 4 games of the season last year, but that's the fluke. The Jason Kidd plan is really to experiment around for the first quarter of the season, and you to see what he's got, you know. And I would very much listen. I mean, of course, as you know, I bet a lot of money on them winning over 50 games, and I would appreciate Jason Kidd taking it seriously for the first quarter of the season. But that's just the way he does.
It's not just him though. Like this is where the thing that I will kind of be. These guys have to take it together, and it's like this is where I was being so sarcastic in the first podcast, where it's like we just have to be able to say out loud when Luka plays like shit, and it does have a downhill effect. If you're the best player and you're playing badly, your body language is bad. Everybody else plays bad. Like we were so hard reasonably on Kyrie Irving during the finals because he was a ghost for all of the Boston games. And it's just a value to these Mavericks that their 2 leaders show it more often than they don't. And I don't know. Yeah, Luka was kind of okay about the refs for the first 4 games. And then he lost his mind tonight. And there's this great clip, the Tari Eason making fun of Derek Lively after Derek Lively commits a foul at the rim where he like does a double foot stomp. And it's like, guys, like, fucking grow up. Stop doing dumb stuff and play better defense. That's all.
But Kirk, overall stats wise, Luka played a pretty good game. He really didn't play a good game in the game we won against Minnesota.
He played a good fourth quarter. He was 6 of 17 with 2 rebounds and 2 assists going into the fourth.
But you count all 4 quarters. And then if you look at his stats as a whole, he played a relatively good game. And that's what you want. And you want him to continue that for the next game. And yeah, this game was a loss, but I think it was a good loss. I think it's the kind of game that sets them up going forward with something to build upon.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I mean, I like the Jimmy Johnson element of this because one thing I kind of say more for myself than I do for the fans is like Jason Kidd knows he can only really pull the trigger so many times where he goes off on these guys. And maybe they do need to see this for themselves. But the reason I bring up the Magic and the Pacers game is the Magic are the kind of team defensively that can cause the Mavericks problems. The Pacers are the kind of team offensively that can just drive the Mavericks into the ground, and they play them on a back-to-back. So, like, Dallas needs to get their shit together now. Like, this cannot happen.
Yeah, I hate the Pacers. Okay, but if the things that you were looking for in the first 5 games, were you looking for Luka to find his shot? You were looking for Klay to find his role in the offense. You're looking for Kyrie to get going early. We haven't seen Grimy and Najee Marshall really find their role yet. But other than that, we've pretty much where we want to be after 5 games, other than we'd like the record to be 4-1 instead of 3-2, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we're in the right spot, and I think they're going to show you over the next 5 games or so that the Mavericks are right where you want them. Don't expect me to be the voice of optimism going forward, but today, that's me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you were at least a little bit optimistic. We need a little bit of that on the show, man. Thanks so much. All right.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kirk.
All right. Talk soon. All right, coming up last but not least, my man Henry. Henry, what's going on, man?
What's going on, man? Luka was dog shit. His body language is absolutely terrible, bro. Holy fucking shit. I am absolutely tired of watching this guy. Feed the hot hand. The offense should have ran through Kyrie Irving today, and he didn't. Luka hit that.
You said that in the chat. Why do you feel that way? I
don't feel because he was on the run. He's what got us in when we were down 20.
Sure.
And it still should have. He should have ran the offense like every time up. He just should have gave it to him.
When they went away from them, though. You know when they went away from him, though, right?
When was that?
So he boofed that left-handed layup.
Yeah, when he was down in, it kind of got like wedged.
And it was like it was just an accident. And like after that, he was not they didn't do it anymore. And I think I understand what you're saying from like the last, let's just say 7 minutes of the game.
Just let him facilitate and decide what to do. There were several plays where Luka absolutely missed Klay Thompson when he threw up that one shot from like the right side of the key short roll, where he just kind of like tossed it up kind of slightly off balance. I really don't know what the hell that was. He had Klay wide open. I don't know, man.
Yes.
Luka is in his head. I don't know what's going on. This is the worst that I have seen him look. Like this is
yes.
I don't know what to put. I really don't know what to say. It is outside of Phoenix, horrendously bad. Like leadership starts from the top and trickles its way down. You said it has a cascading effect, and that could not be more true. It is permeating throughout the entire team. Like he needs to stop this. And I think B-Rod said something earlier. I can't remember what he said. He said he had something right on the head, right as he was ending, right before he got off. I can't remember what he said, but it is bad. It is really fucking bad right now. Klay needed more shots. I don't know why. I mean, obviously I don't watch enough Rockets games. Does Sanguine always play like a White Hart in SGA? Is he?
Yeah,
really
he's a son of a bitch, man. There's a reason. He's like who's the white dude up in Sacramento?
Sabonis.
He's in the Sabonis ilk of guys who, if you watch him night in and night out, you probably absolutely love him. If you watch him once in every great while, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? And
like, I'm really on my shit list, bro. That is disgusting gameplay.
He's remarkable. He is so maddening to watch. And I say that almost with the healthy level of like the combination of disdain and respect that I would have with post players in the mid 2000s. He's just so frustrating. And the Mavericks, so I'm arguing in the chat with a couple of folks, like he's the kind of post player that very few teams really have. Like you have Embiid, you have Jokic, who are post players who don't really play out of the post, but they have like back to the basket, whirling dervish. Like they just have the ability to play from any sort of, and he's in that ilk offensively. Defensively, I think is where the problem is. What was really fascinating though was PJ just absolutely putting the clamps on him. And I need to go back and watch what he was doing against Lively and Gafford to get them into foul trouble versus what PJ was doing. And honestly, my opinion, having just sort of thinking about this, and this is not backed by anything, my opinion, Henry, is that the other defensive options were doing a much better job containing dribble penetration, which that meant PJ didn't have to cover everyone's ass the way Lively and Gafford were forced to. And then they find Sanguine on these little, short roll, not short roll, just like dives and the ability, because he was really crafty with the ball, man. He's shocking.
Yeah, but he just kept snapping his head back. Every time he drove to the rim, he was falling all over the place, real lumbering, real sloppy, real kind of uncoordinated. And I think he might have been doing that on purpose to really
like it looks uncoordinated, but
yeah,
it's absolutely like predetermined. It's good stuff.
Absolutely.
He's the kind of guy I would love hating if the Rockets were better.
That is absolutely, the Rockets are dog shit. They should not have absolutely won that game. And it's like, was it just the bounce of the ball? Why do you feel like we gave up so many offensive rebounds tonight?
Honestly, they were all out of position, having to cover each other's ass on different plays within drives. It's like it was a mess, and you just Kid needs to re-emphasize it, in my opinion.
Why again? I think Brian said this. Why do we look so underprepared?
Yes,
like we genuinely have no idea.
Dude, we in this ridiculous fan community that we have here have backpedaled our Kid criticism while forgetting the Jason Kidd we have come to know, love, and hate.
From Boston, from Milwaukee. I tried to give it to him at the end of the season last year. He really coached his ass off, so I backed off for a little bit. But he's had no success in coaching at all. So
the underprepared thing has been a 3 seasons in a row running thing where it's like these guys are looking like a youth league team with the rebound. I mean, the other element is like the Rockets are just really good at they're athletic as all get out.
True, but I feel like MA had an idea. I don't feel like this team. And again, I think one of the coaches I really like, who I've said before, is fucking Will Hardy from the Jazz. I don't feel like this team is underprepared if Will Hardy or Ime is the coach of this team. Just doesn't happen.
And this is where I have such a hard. Go ahead.
I was just about to say, was Luka missing preseason this much of a drop? Like, why is he in his head so fucking much?
I don't have a good answer for that because it looks as close to quicksand as I've seen Luka ever be. I will say that, like, I think we have to give appreciation for the fact that Luka coming into the game shooting poorly against a team with 3 guys that they can throw at him in some respect or another. You know, who do we got here? We got Dylan Brooks, who is just he and Luka love to hate each other when they're on their basketball court. You have Thompson, who's incredible. They just have, and even, I mean, I wonder who else spent time on him. I thought, like, because there were some switches and things like that. I thought all the different guys did a really nice job on him. So it's a little column A, a little column B, where part of me wants to scream at Luka and be like, "You're Luka Doncic, get your shit together." And I do at least need to issue some appreciation for a guy like Thompson, for example, who is just a all multiverse athlete getting in his grill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's frustrating.
Oh, but that's another thing I like to say. Magic, that's going to be a win, but Pacers, we're losing that. We're losing that regardless. Like fucking Rick Carlisle runs circles around us every single time. Those are really the 2 things that hurt us. If you all 1 through 5 can switch, and you have a stretch 5, and they have both of those things. So, and whether it's a schedule loss or not, we're losing to the Pacers regardless. Like they just got our fucking number.
They do.
Worried
about that one.
Rick Carlisle has a point to prove, but
yeah,
I don't know, man. I'm frustrated, but I'm gonna let the next guy come up, or I'm gonna let you go to sleep.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Thanks so much, Henry. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. See you.
All right, we don't really have anybody else waiting. We got some lively chat participation. I really appreciate everybody. Some good comments. So no one is screaming at each other in the comments, which can tend to be the case though. Julius Randle is a major upgrade from PJ at the 4. Come on, my friend. You were making such good arguments. Yes, I would rather have PJ over Randle. Randle is not a good basketball player. I've watched him for the better part of a decade. How teams fit together is extraordinarily important. And Randle is an isolation post player who wants to do the same stuff that kind of Luka does, only he's not Luka. I love you guys, man. Yes, he made an all-NBA team. Congratulations. No, I'm a very good and very smart basketball analyst, and Julius Randle is not a good basketball player. Like, what are we doing here? That's not fair. He is a functional basketball player who is very good in a particular context, and that context is not part of a team with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, who have the ball for huge periods of time. That's really where we are. So anyway, everybody be good. You can enjoy the rest of the week. We have a Friday and a Saturday off. And then the Mavericks play the Magic on Sunday night and the Pacers on Monday night. That Monday night game is bizarre. That's when the Mavericks play at 8:45 p.m. Central Time. That's part of the night. You know, we don't get to actually have NBA basketball on election night for reasons that I don't want to get into because everyone would yell at me. But they start NBA games on Monday night every 15 minutes, and they go every 15 minutes. So, Seeker Man, thank you so much for hanging out in the comments. Good to see a lively conversation. Lots of other folks down there. Everybody be good. Enjoy your weekend, and we will talk soon. Go Mavs.